How's it going then? Um, just figured I'd comment on your video. And I am essentially in the same spot you are. My view on politics is quite skewed. I tend to be skeptical of most politicians, regardless of party. So when I hear Obama and McCain talk about change, it's really, I take it as really hard to believe, given the fact, based off our history, we've had the same shit for the last 40 years. I mean, the 70s we had high interest rates, we had high inflation, we had high unemployment. 80s we had a high deficit, 90s we had a deficit, late 90s we had a balloon economy, 2000 we now have we now have the biggest government, and the biggest deficit. So, that's just a quick rundown of the past 40 years. I mean, so when people talk about change, I take it as skepticism regardless of party, because if you remember in '94, the Republicans talked about changing, getting rid of the Department of Education. They talked about balancing the budget, which it was balanced, but you figure in 2006 and 2004 when the Democrats started to take over, we were promised an end of the war in Iraq. We were promised universal health care. We were promised better paying jobs, no outsourcing of jobs, So, and it's 2008, almost 2009 now, with the Democrats being in charge, and nothing's changed. It's still the same. We're still in Iraq. We still have a big deficit. So, the choice of Sarah Palin, I like the fact that she's willing to take on the establishment, regardless of party. People always claim there's an ulterior motive. Well, it's probably true. There usually is. As far as experience, the way I look at it is, being a mom of 5 kids is not an easy job. I'm from a family of 4 kids, and I saw what my mom had to go through. It's not fun. And, it's a hard job. And then you add on to the fact that she's been a mayor and she's been a governor. Now, you can talk about tenure, and that's a debatable point. Length of experience and inexperience, that point's up to debate. My problem with that argument is, the Democrats are using it now, and the Republicans are counting with Barack Obama's inexperience. And personally, I think, in my honest opinion, she is more qualified, having dealt with more rounded issues of a state, as opposed to being a senator, where you deal with your issues, but for the most part, it's about what you earmark and what you add to bills, and half the time it's pointless legislation that our Congress does. So, like I said, I like the fact she's willing to take on the establishment. Obama, to me, he seems like a typical, while charismatic, DC insider. He's, this is for my feeling for both him and McCain. And, Biden, for me, just kind of tips my point that much more. While Biden is blunt and upfront and what you see is what you get, he's also essentially a lifetime, DC insider. And the same with Obama almost. I mean, he's been in politics for how long now? He's been in D.C. and McCain's a lifetime or two. So when I hear any of these political groups talk about change, I have a really, really hard time believing it. Just based off being a student of history and knowing how our political system is in the last 40 years anyway. But to pick up Palin, it could swing a lot of voters to McCain's way. It might backfire. I think she's a good counterweight to McCain. As far as they claim that McCain is, like they claim that he's an insider. He's been in D.C. too long. Palin is a fresh face. You're not gonna. She's not attached to or been in D.C. as far as the politics is concerned. And Obama's supposed lack of experience is counterweighted by Biden, but Biden is also a lifetime insider. So I mean, it's kind of like, who do you pick, really? I mean, you got one, at least he's picking a fresh face that hasn't dealt with Washington. You got one that's been in Washington, and he picks a vice presidential candidate that's been in Washington for 30 years or whatever. I mean, it's a hard choice. I'll admit it. Some things Obama talks about I like. Some things he talks about that I really don't like. I'm not gonna get into specifics of it, but the same goes for McCain though. McCain, much respect for your military service, but I have some serious reservations on some of his policies that he's talked of in the past and that he sponsored in the Senate. So I mean, this is the decision most voters will come down to. Is, at least for me and my demographic. I mean, I'm 24. And most people in my demographic who do vote are very skeptical of politicians. People call Barack Obama like a dark horse candidate, out of nowhere. Personally, Obama leans too much one way, and McCain leans too much one way. You have to find that center for politicians, because we need to get back to doing the business of the country as opposed to the Senate sponsoring bills about constitutional amendments that don't matter or whatever. But, we need to focus on the issues affecting our country now. Yes, gas. Yes, gas prices. Alternative fuels. Where taxes should go up, down, left, right, whatever. All these other various ways that we need to focus on internal problems while still focusing on things such as the threat of terrorism and other aspects. And, this is all, we can't just pick a VP and a president based off campaign slogans and promises. Because at the end, that's not how we want a president or a VP decided. Because most of the time, those promises are very rarely kept. That's just my take on it. Love to hear yours.